Hello and welcome back to the Rex Capital channel, and welcome to today's market update on Bitcoin and the market leaders in Ethereum and Litecoin. A lot has been going on in the crypto space over the past 24 hours, and definitely so since the last update on Monday. So without further ado, let's look at how things have developed and let's dive right in. So this is the ascending broadening wedge, a typically bearish pattern right on Bitcoin's price action. This is the channel that we've been looking at in the previous update on Monday, but I just want you to keep this in your mind for the time being. We're not going to dive into it because we are going to focus specifically on the bear flag, and this is the bear flag that I've been covering extensively on my Twitter. So these charts are essentially part of that Twitter thread on Bitcoin, which spans all the way back to July, I think. So definitely a good progression of all the different moves. But macro speaking, not much has changed, as you guys know, from 9,300, which is the range high of the monthly range, to the range low of 7,750. That is the macro monthly range that Bitcoin is currently in, and this bear flagging structure is just the more micro perspective on what's going on in Bitcoin's current price action, but overall nothing is really changing on the macro scale. So let's cycle back to Monday. This is the Monday chart for the bear flag. We saw this strong bullish divergence on Friday. So over the weekend, we saw this strong bullish divergence play out. It broke to the upside and broke back in to this bear flagging structure. And what I spoke about in Monday's video, in Monday's market update, is that we could see some further upside towards this confluent resistance area as long as Bitcoin holds above this black uptrend line, which is essentially the bear flag bottom support. So this was what I was looking for. As long as Bitcoin could hold above this level, then we could see that upside. So if we cycle to the next chart, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing that pullback, and this was a successful retest at first. We saw that the bear flag bottom flipped into a support, so Bitcoin confirmed this bear flag bottom as a support, and we even saw a rebound. So this is essentially the testing, but as we can see, this rebound wasn't too strong. We saw a very limited bounce from this bear flag bottom support, and that's the problem, because we could see weakness here, and we can see weakness in two ways. First of all, we see a successful retest, which is positive, but the candles that followed, these are, by the way, 4-hour candles. So the 4-hour candles, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 candles, roughly speaking, this portion of price action, these were very small 4-hour candles, which just showed to us that this uptrend, that latest rebound, didn't have that much strength. We didn't really see buyers jump on the opportunity to just buy into Bitcoin only over here once we saw that euphoria stage of the uptrend. Every uptrend has a few stages, of course, and it can extend to market cycles or just small rebounds, and the last stage of an uptrend is usually the euphoria stage. So this is where we have that euphoria stage after a very lackluster climb. So that first sign of weakness are these small candles, this grinding, this very small demand from buyers. But the second sign, and this is of course something we've alluded to, is the rebound itself, which was very limited because we saw a very strong cancellation of that latest move. It pretty much cancelled the entirety of this successful retest, which is weakness in of itself. So the bear flag support turned out to be very weak indeed, and that's essentially something that I was covering yesterday in Bitcoin's price as it was happening. So once we saw that successful retest, but then the cancellation of that retest, the entirety of that move was cancelled, the bear flag support was once again being tested, and I didn't really have much confidence here because that was definitely a sign of weakness, and I spoke about a breakdown about to occur. And this breakdown was actually prompted by a 4-hour candle open below the bear flag support. So that's a very good entry for a trader such as myself. If I see a 4-hour candle open below the bear flag support after all of this weakness, then that's a good confirmation of the breakdown and a good confirmation spot for me to enter a short. And of course we saw continuation, strong panic, fear, a lot of fervent emotional reactions from the buyers, or at least the sellers, the panic sellers, because we see a strong red candle, which led us to the green area once again. And this is the green area that we've been looking at for the past while on this channel, and this is where we're seeing some buy support from the buyers. But remember, we saw quite a lot of accumulation here before this rally, but we need to start to answer, or at least question ourselves, will we see that demand once again? Because of course each demand zone doesn't strengthen over time, it actually tends to weaken. So we have to watch for signs of weakness. Is this buy support starting to weaken? Is this demand area starting to weaken? So for the time being, let's cycle back to that first initial chart, the ascending broadening wedge. We'll notice an interesting confluence here, and I think you might know what I'm talking about. This is the green area for the bear flag chart that we're looking at. This is a different set of technical analysis, but we're seeing a lot of confluence in the bounce in this uptrend line for the ascending broadening wedge. So definitely a lot of confluence where we're seeing a bounce, just a different style, a different take on my view on Bitcoin, but it still yields the same result. And I present this chart to you because it demonstrates the higher low tendency much better than this chart. The higher low tendency that I'm talking about is this right over here. So essentially speaking, we are talking about this being a weakening demand zone, and definitely that is something to bear in mind, but at the same time we have to bear in mind the simple thing, which is the higher low tendency over here. People want to buy Bitcoin at a premium each time it reaches these levels, right? So we're seeing that Bitcoin is being bought up at a little bit more of a premium than before, but at the same time we need to see if this psychology is going to remain intact over time. And this is what I want to see. I want this higher low to hold. I want this demand area to hold, because if it doesn't, we will most likely see a breakdown of these higher lows. So that psychology is going to dissipate. It's going to be invalidated. People aren't going to want to buy Bitcoin at a premium anymore, because we're probably going to see a breakdown from here all the way back towards the range low of the macro monthly range. And this is a region we've been talking about for a while now, but at the same time we still need to have a breach from here. So the point is, this higher low has to maintain itself, and the confluent demand area has to reach, or at least keep itself as well. It needs to hold. We need to have price strength confirmation over here, and it's very important that buyers step in. So we need to look for that buy side volume start to trickle in into the market, because if it doesn't, then this will just be relief and we'll see continuation in the downtrend with a breakdown from this green region and an invalidation of the higher lows. So what I want to focus on in this chart is, are we seeing a developing weakness in this higher low? So let's measure a few things. This recent wick towards the higher low right over here, towards this support, it bounced, and then we saw a revisit of this support once again 6 days later. Let's have a look at the same. Let's do the same for the next piece of price action. So once we saw that bounce towards here, that was 11 days. So from the support we saw a bounce all the way to this point over here, and then price returned 11 days later to just test this support once again. So that's 11 days. So over here, from here to here, that was 6 days, and from here to here, that was 11 days. So okay, that's quite interesting. But if we look at this wick right over here, this rebound towards this rebound, that's 3 days. So the point I'm trying to make is that this latest bounce from this support took only 3 days to top out, essentially, because now we're seeing the support become revisited once again. Before it was 11 days, and even before that it was 6 days, but now it's only 3 days. So we're seeing that this support is actually weakening over time. The rebound from this support over here yielded a very limited rally, which was essentially cancelled out quite as quick as the rebound itself. We see an entire cancellation of this latest rebound, which is why I'm not too confident in this higher low at the moment. So it's quite interesting what we're seeing on Bitcoin at the moment, this developing weakness in the higher low support. And if we cycle back to around last week, this time last week, I recorded a YouTube video where I spoke about the Fear and Greed Index, and I spoke about how the market wasn't fearful enough for this recent price action to be a long-term reversal for Bitcoin. And last week, the Fear and Greed Index was actually 40, and now, 1 week later, it's 33 on the index. So we are seeing a increase in fear towards Bitcoin, but this fear is still too high, or at least the fear is too low. The index value is too high. So what we want to see is extreme fear. We want people to get even more fearful towards Bitcoin, towards the around 1510 index area, because this is usually where we tend to see reversals in Bitcoin's price, as I spoke about in one of my articles about the Fear and Greed Index and how it can predict Bitcoin price reversals. So if you'd like to read that article, I'm going to link it in the description below. But for the time being, 33, the index value is decreasing. People are becoming more fearful. And what I'd like to see from this index is for people to become a bit more fearful over time, because that would actually precede a reversal in Bitcoin's price. So actually, if we see a breakdown from the high low on Bitcoin's price action, we'd probably see more fear come into the market. We'll probably see emotional, fervent panic selling in Bitcoin's price action as it approaches the macro range low of the monthly range, 750. So definitely something to watch out for. Definitely we need to keep this Fear and Greed Index in mind. We have to keep our finger on the pulse when it comes to the market sentiment towards Bitcoin. But let's dive into the next charts, to Ethereum and Litecoin specifically. So I've been covering Ethereum USD for the past while on this channel, and in the previous update I've been focusing on this higher low switching into a resistance. What I was interested in is for this resistance to reject price, because if it did, we'd probably see a revisit of the bottom of the macro weekly channel, $160. And what we're seeing for the time being is that this might become a legitimate possibility. We might see this bottom weekly channel become tested and revisited by Ethereum's price action. So essentially, this is something we expected. We were talking about this for the past while, and to see this turn into a reality with each passing day is quite interesting. So that's something I'm going to be looking out for a test of this bottom for Ethereum. But moving on to Ethereum BTC. So this is Ethereum BTC, and we're seeing that this support isn't really generating that much buy interest at these levels. Unfortunately, in the previous update I mentioned that this support is quite crucial, and I thought it could potentially prompt some coiling in towards this the apex of this triangle, but we are seeing a lot of weakness here already, so I don't even think that this could even happen now. We might even go straight to the breakdown, but this breakdown would be confirmed once we see this 1-day candle close below the support. We're already seeing lower time frame candle closes below the support, so not a good sign for Ethereum BTC, because if it does confirm a breakdown from here, then it only has a strong support all the way down here, and this is roughly the region where we might see some market reaction. But the strongest demand zone next is this blue box. There aren't many supports on the way down here until really this region, but in of itself it might not be strong enough to prop Ethereum BTC's price action, so we might revisit this zone altogether. This is where we have the strongest demand, in my personal opinion. This is where we'll probably see a strong market reaction, but for the time being, these are the levels to watch on that retrace. But first of all, we have to not get ahead of ourselves too far. At least we have to focus on this local support and just watch for that breakdown first. But moving on to Litecoin USD, not much really is changing. Litecoin can't really figure out what this blue level means to it. Is it a resistance? Is it a support? But of course, if we see Litecoin roll over like it is at the moment, then I'm probably going to look for these particular levels for some demand, for some buy interest to flood into the Litecoin USD market. But at the moment, not much really is going on. I just want Litecoin USD to just steer clear finally from this blue dashed support line, this level. I want it to just steer clear from there so that I can actually establish some sustainable directional bias, because at the moment it's not really doing much. So once it has that breakdown, once we see that downside and Litecoin just move away from this line, I think we might see these levels for some potential demand from buyers in the market. But moving on to Litecoin BTC, this is quite a similar situation to Ethereum USD, because we were looking at the higher low for it to flip into a resistance for Ethereum USD, and we were looking at the same for Litecoin BTC. And even though Ethereum USD has enjoyed more downside since flipping into a resistance, flipping that higher low into a new resistance, Litecoin BTC has done essentially the same, but it hasn't really had that downside price action since then. So even though we're seeing a rejection, the downside is quite limited, but what I'd like to see is for this downside to just accelerate, for the sellers to truly gain that confidence, for the bears to take precedent and direct the market to just make that price action go down a little bit more, because this is an area of historical demand for Litecoin. So I feel that Litecoin BTC has to delve deeper into this region to just absorb those buy orders and generate some sort of market interest, which would allow for some sort of positive price action. But until then, a rejection, I'd like to see some additional follow through on this rejection from the higher low resistance. And finally, trick or treat. Well, on the Rex Capital channel, it's going to be treat this Halloween. Treat yourself to a $30 discount on Rex Capital courses. So the risk management course and the technical analysis course. You can use this discount code Halloween and gain a $30 discount on both courses. So you could type in the discount code Halloween on the technical analysis course and gain a $30 discount there, and you can type in the discount code Halloween on the risk management course to save $30 as well. So in total you can save $60 on both courses, and this offer ends on the 1st of November after Halloween. So definitely a good deal. Check it out if you're interested. The links are in the description down below for both the TA course and the risk management course. And having said that, that's about it for today's market update. If you liked the video and enjoyed it, please leave a like. It looks very similar to this right over here, a thumbs up, but it's blue here on YouTube. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, keep in touch, press the red button, subscribe to the channel. I'm Rex Capital, and I'll speak to you soon.